There is a bag of rice in most British kitchens at this very moment. It might be sitting next to the pasta or tucked behind the tins or stacked in the cupboard above the kettle. You bought it without much thought because rice is rice. Simple, safe, honest food. The kind of thing you have been cooking since you first had your own kitchen. The kind of thing your mother cooked before you and her mother before that. For most of us, rice is the ingredient we never question. We choose our brand once and we stick to it. We assume the big names have been tested, that the supermarkets have done their checks, that someone somewhere in the system is making sure everything is fine. We trust the familiar packaging, we trust the name on the bag. Now, but a study published in 2025 tested 145 rice products from popular brands sold across Britain and the United States. Every single sample contained arsenic, not one exception, and more than a quarter of those samples exceeded the safety limits set specifically to protect young children. That is not a fringe finding from a minor publication. That is a systematic result from one of the most comprehensive rice contamination studies ever carried out. Arsenic is not something that gets added during processing. It is something rice absorbs naturally from the soil and water it grows in far more efficiently than almost any other crop. And the levels it absorbs depend entirely on where it is grown. Some regions produce rice that falls well within safe limits. Others produce rice that does not. And the brands selling you that rice are under no legal obligation to tell you which category yours falls into. What makes this more troubling is that the brands responsible are not obscure foreign imports nobody has heard of. They are the ones you recognize. The ones with the familiar packaging, the reassuring names, the decades of advertising behind them. The brands you may have been buying every week for the past 20 or 30 years. By the end of this video, you will know which 10 brands you need to think twice about and which 2 are genuinely doing things differently. Stay with me, because the first one on this list is probably in your kitchen right now. Number 10. Morrison's Savers Long Grain Rice. Let us begin at the very bottom of the pricing ladder. Morrison's Savers Long Grain Rice is positioned as an act of kindness toward families on a budget. The message on the shelf is simple. You do not have much money, and we understand. Here is your rice for almost nothing. But here is what that price point actually means in practice. Rice at this level is sourced purely on cost. Whichever supplier can meet the number gets the contract. There is no single origin guarantee, no published testing data, and no transparency whatsoever about which country the grain came from, which region it was grown in, or what the soil and water conditions were during its growing season. The packaging will tell you it was packed in the United Kingdom. What it will not tell you is where the rice was before it arrived here. That matters enormously. Arsenic levels in rice vary by up to 400% depending on where it is grown. Rice absorbs arsenic from contaminated soil and irrigation water during the growing process. When you have no information about origin, you have no way of making an informed choice. You are simply hoping. For pensioners living on a state pension, for families relying on universal credit, for anyone stretched to the limit at the end of the month, this is the rice that ends up in the trolley week after week. The people with the fewest resources are the ones with the least protection. That is not an accident. That is what happens when the lowest price is the only priority anywhere in the supply chain. Morrison's is not unique in this problem. But at this price, something always gives. And what gives is usually testing, traceability, and quality control. Number 9. Asda Just Essentials. Long grain rice. Asda's Just Essentials range was built for one purpose: to reach the price-sensitive shopper before any other supermarket does. The long grain rice in this range sells at a price point that should make any food scientist pause. To hit that number, Asda sources from wherever the supply chain is cheapest at the time of purchase. The country of origin on the label may say packed in the United Kingdom, but packing is not growing. The grain itself could have come from any number of countries across a given year, and there is nothing on the packaging to tell you which. This matters beyond contamination risk. The 2025 Healthy Babies Bright Futures study, which tested 145 rice samples, found arsenic in every single one. The levels varied enormously depending on where each sample was sourced. Without origin transparency, there is no way for a shopper standing in an Asda aisle to know whether the bag in front of them falls at the safer end of that spectrum or not. The grain itself, once milled, has its bran and germ completely removed. What is left is almost entirely refined starch. The body breaks that down quickly, causing a sharp rise in blood sugar followed by a corresponding fall. For people managing type 2 diabetes or those trying to avoid developing it, that pattern repeated over years does real cumulative damage. It contributes to insulin resistance and places sustained pressure on the pancreas. The NHS estimates that over 5 million people in the United Kingdom are currently living with type 2 diabetes, with millions more considered at high risk. For a significant portion of those people, what they eat at every meal genuinely matters. A budget rice brand that raises blood sugar sharply and offers no information about arsenic levels is not serving those people well. It is simply offering them the cheapest available version of a risk they do not know they are taking. Number 8. Ben's Original Long Grain Rice. Most people in Britain know this brand as Uncle Ben's. It rebranded to Ben's Original in 2020, but the distinctive orange packaging is still instantly recognizable after more than 6 decades on British supermarket shelves. Ben's Original built its reputation on something called the converted rice process. Rice is partially cooked under steam pressure before it is milled. The claim is that this locks in more nutrients than standard milling, and to give credit where it is due, there is some basis for that claim. Converted rice does retain marginally more nutrition than ordinary white rice put through the standard milling process. But here is what the converted process does not fix. It does not address arsenic. Due the rice still absorbs heavy metals from the soil and water during growing, the processing stage happens after the grain is already harvested. By that point, whatever the plant absorbed from its environment over the growing season is already locked inside the grain. No industrial processing step removes arsenic once it is present. In 2025, Ben's Original issued a voluntary recall in the United Kingdom after small stones were discovered inside rice pouches. Physical contamination, stones that had passed through the entire supply chain, through processing, through quality checking, through packaging, and into finished products sitting on supermarket shelves across the country. Regulators classified this as a health risk because biting into a stone can fracture a tooth, damage dental work, or cause internal injury if swallowed. A recall of this kind reveals what routine quality control failed to catch. And for a brand that has been selling rice in Britain for over 60 years, stones appearing in a finished product ask uncomfortable questions about what else the system is not catching before it reaches your plate. Number 7. Tesco own brand, Basmati rice. Tesco is Britain's largest supermarket by market share. It has more stores than any other grocery retailer in the country, which means its own brand products reach more households than almost any named alternative. When Tesco sells rice under its own label, it is selling to millions of people who trust the Tesco name as a default. It is selling to people doing the weekly shop on a Saturday morning who pick up the familiar Tesco bag because they have done it dozens of times before and it has always been fine. That trust is not entirely without foundation. Tesco applies supplier standards and food safety requirements, and it operates within the legal framework that governs food sold in Britain. But own brand products at major supermarkets operate on a logic that is fundamentally different from specialist food producers. The supplier is often chosen through a competitive tender process where price plays a central role. Contracts change. Suppliers rotate. The rice inside a Tesco own brand bag one year may come from an entirely different source the following year, and the packaging will not tell you that has happened. It will look exactly the same. The design, the name, the weight, nothing to indicate that the grain inside came from a completely different part of the world this time. This creates a consistency problem that goes beyond taste and texture. If origin affects arsenic levels, and the evidence strongly suggests it does, then a product with a rotating supply chain carries rotating contamination risk. You cannot establish a baseline. You cannot make the same choice twice in any meaningful sense because the choice is not actually the same twice. Tesco does not publish batch-specific arsenic testing data for its own brand rice. It does not disclose which country each batch was sourced from beyond the legally required minimum labeling. And it is worth noting that since the United Kingdom left the European Union, the origin labeling requirements here are lower than the standards that continue to apply across Europe. British consumers are currently receiving less information about the same types of products than their counterparts on the continent. That is a gap that has widened since 2020, and the supermarkets are under no particular commercial pressure to close it themselves. Number 6. Sainsbury's taste the difference. Basmati rice. This is where the frustration sharpens, because with budget products, at least the low price signals the low investment in quality. Sainsbury's Taste the Difference is a premium range. The packaging is dark and sophisticated, the gold lettering, the upmarket colour scheme, the positioning alongside the other premium lines. Every element of the shelf experience says that you are paying more because you are getting more. But premium branding is not the same as premium safety standards, and this is a distinction that the packaging is specifically designed to blur. Sainsbury's Taste the Difference Basmati is still milled and polished to produce the uniform white grains the market expects. That milling strips away the bran and germ, removing the naturally occurring fiber and micronutrients. What remains is primarily refined starch that the body digests relatively quickly, producing a sharper blood sugar response than less processed alternatives. Crucially, Sainsbury's does not publish arsenic testing data for this range. There is no accessible information about which specific regions the basmati is sourced from in any given year. The grain may be blended from multiple countries to ensure year-round supply at a consistent price. The difference you are paying for is primarily grain length, cooking consistency, and aroma. Not any verified safety or nutritional advantage over a much cheaper bag from the same supermarket. When someone reaches for the premium option, specifically because they want to feed their family something better, They deserve to know what better actually means. Right now, Sainsbury's Taste the Difference is not telling them. If you're finding this useful, do hit the like button now. It helps more people across Britain find this kind of research. And subscribe if you want to be first to see what we look into next. There is no charge, and it takes a few seconds. Number 5. Laila Basmati rice. If you have ever visited an Asian supermarket, a Tesco, an Asda, or a Cash, and carry anywhere in England, you have seen Laila. The large 5 kilogram and 10 kilogram bags stacked in high columns near the entrance, loaded into trolleys by families buying in bulk. Laila is one of the highest-selling Basmati brands in the United Kingdom, particularly within South Asian communities for whom rice is not a side dish. It is the central component of the meal, cooked every single day. The brand positions itself as a step above the very cheapest options. The packaging looks confident and established, but look more closely at what you are actually getting. Laila sources rice from multiple countries depending on where supply is cheapest at any given time. India one season, Pakistan the next, wherever the price allows. This multi-region blending keeps costs low and shelves consistently stocked, but it eliminates the consistency that makes a genuinely good rice reliable. One bag cooks into long, separate grains. The next comes out sticky. The bag after that smells faintly flat, lacking the nutty, floral aroma that properly aged Basmati produces. Authentic Basmati benefits from an aging period of 12 to 18 months after harvest. During that time, moisture levels decrease, starches crystallize, and the naturally occurring aromatic compound that gives Basmati its characteristic scent becomes more concentrated. Laila does not publicly disclose its aging process. Given the pricing structure and the volumes at which the brand operates, it is difficult to reconcile a genuine 12 to 18-month aging period with the economics of what is on the shelf. Like most mass-market rice sold in Britain, Laila is heavily milled, removing the bran and germ entirely. Synthetic vitamins are then added back to meet UK food standards: niacin, thiamine, folic acid, iron. These are laboratory-produced replacements applied after the milling process has stripped away the naturally occurring equivalents. They are not the same, and your body does not process them identically. No published arsenic testing data, no single origin guarantee, no aging transparency, just a familiar bag at a familiar price, and millions of British families trusting it without knowing what the alternative looks like. Number 4. Tesco Special Fried Rice Ready Pouches. This entry moves from chronic, long-term risk into something far more immediate. On the 26th of January 2026, the Food Standards Agency issued an urgent allergy alert. Tesco's Special Fried Rice, a 350-gram ready-to-heat pouch with a use-by date of the 2nd of February 2026, was recalled because it contained wheat and gluten that were not declared anywhere on the label. Let that sit for a moment. Tesco sold a product containing a major allergen to a country where an estimated 1 in every 100 people lives with celiac disease, with many more experiencing wheat intolerance or sensitivity. The label made no mention of wheat, none. A person with celiac disease picking up that pouch had no information, no warning, and no reason to suspect they were about to cause themselves serious harm. The only protection available was a recall notice issued after the product had already been in homes for an unknown period. The FSA's official alert confirmed the recall was due to wheat not being declared on the label. That is, a failure of allergen labeling, one of the most heavily regulated areas of food law in the United Kingdom. This is not a grey area. Allergen declaration is mandatory. It is a legal requirement precisely because the consequences of getting it wrong can be severe, or in some cases, fatal. A company of Tesco's scale, with its resources, its supplier relationships, and its regulatory obligations, allowed an undeclared allergen to pass through every stage of its quality control process and reach supermarket shelves across Britain. The recall was the correction, but the product should never have been approved for sale in the condition it was in. If this can happen with allergen labeling, one of the most carefully scrutinized areas of food safety regulation, what else is passing through systems that are assumed to be working? Number 3. Tilda Pure Basmati rice. This one will surprise a great many people. Tilda is arguably the most recognized rice brand in the United Kingdom. Market research suggests it holds around 46% of the Basmati rice market in Britain. That is, nearly half of all Basmati rice sold in this country going into purple and gold Tilda bags. The brand built its entire identity around a single word: pure. Tilda claims to operate its own DNA testing laboratory and to test every batch of rice for authenticity and purity. That is a credible-sounding commitment. But claiming to test is not the same as demonstrating that the tests have been done and showing the results. Tilda does not publish batch-specific arsenic testing data in any format that is accessible and verifiable by the public. There is no public register, no independently audited database, no QR code on the packaging that takes you to confirmed, third-party verified safety numbers. You are asked to take the brand at its word. Basmati fraud is a well-documented and persistent problem in Britain. The UK Rice Association has previously tested Basmati samples from across the market and found a significant proportion contained non-Basmati varieties blended in some cases substantially. In 2025, the Food Standards Agency's National Food Crime Unit made arrests following an investigation into fraudulent Basmati labeling, where cheaper grains were being packaged and sold as premium Basmati at premium prices. Tilda has not been implicated in those specific cases, but without transparent, publicly available, independently verified test results, there is no mechanism by which a consumer can confirm the contents of the bag they are holding. Long-term buyers of Tilda have documented changes in the product. Reviews on retail sites, comments on food forums, and discussions in South Asian community groups consistently describe the same pattern. The rice has become less fragrant, more prone to sticking, less consistent from bag to bag. These are the indicators of a brand managing costs in ways that affect the thing the brand was originally known for. Tilda charges a premium price. Premium pricing creates an expectation. That expectation is currently not being met with the transparent, independently verifiable data that would justify it. The packaging says pure. The data to confirm it is not on the shelf. Number 2. Any supermarket own brand organic brown rice. This one is going to upset people because the organic brown rice buyer is typically someone who cares deeply about what they eat. They have done the research, they read labels, they are paying significantly more, and they believe that extra cost is buying them something meaningfully safer and more nutritious. That belief is entirely understandable, and for most food categories, it is largely correct. For rice, the picture is more complicated. Brown rice retains its bran layer. That outer coating is where arsenic accumulates in a rice grain. White rice has the bran removed during milling, which substantially reduces the arsenic remaining in the grain you eat. Brown rice keeps the bran intact. A study from the University of Sheffield, which tested rice samples sold across the United Kingdom, confirmed that brown rice contains statistically significantly higher concentrations of inorganic arsenic than white rice. Inorganic arsenic is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. That places it in the same category as asbestos and tobacco. Now add the organic dimension. Organic farming methods prohibit synthetic pesticides, which is genuinely beneficial in many contexts. However, the weed management approaches used in organic rice growing typically involve more extensive flooding of paddy fields. Flooded, waterlogged, oxygen-depleted soil creates conditions where arsenic becomes far more mobile and far more available for absorption by the rice plant. And research has found that organically grown rice can carry higher arsenic concentrations than conventionally grown rice for precisely this reason. So, when you buy organic brown basmati from Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Tesco, or any other British supermarket, you may be combining two separate factors that both increase arsenic exposure in the grain you eat: the bran layer that concentrates the metal and the growing method that increases how much the plant takes up in the first place. And you are paying substantially more for the product. Parents choosing this for their children because they believe it is the cleanest, most natural option deserve to know this information. The organic certification addresses pesticide use and farming practices. It does not address arsenic. Those are two entirely different things, and the packaging does not distinguish between them. Number 1. Tilda whole grain basmati rice. If number 3 surprised you, this one will genuinely give you pause, because this is the product that the most health-informed British buyers specifically seek out. Not just Tilda, but Tilda whole grain, the higher-priced whole grain version of Britain's most trusted rice brand, chosen deliberately by people who have done their homework. The reasoning seems completely sound. Whole grain means the bran is retained, which means more dietary fiber, more naturally occurring nutrients, and a lower glycemic response compared to heavily milled white rice. The NHS recommends choosing whole grain options. Nutritionists and dietitians recommend whole grain options. Selecting the whole grain version of any grain product feels like the informed, health-responsible decision. It is the choice that says, I have thought about this. But here is what the Tilda whole grain basmati packaging does not tell you. The bran layer that makes whole grain basmati nutritionally superior to white rice is exactly the same part of the grain where arsenic concentrates most heavily. Research has consistently found that brown and whole grain rice contains substantially more arsenic than white rice from the same source, with some studies recording the difference at around 80% higher. Choosing the whole grain version means choosing the version with the highest arsenic concentration. And as discussed with Tilda Pure Basmati above, Tilda does not publish batch-specific arsenic testing results in a publicly accessible, independently verified format. The brand provides very considerable reassurance. The data to support that reassurance is not available to the consumer in any verifiable form. Think carefully about what this combination means for the person buying it: a health-conscious person who has researched their food choices, someone who reads nutritional information, who listens to medical guidance, who specifically chooses the whole grain option because they want to do right by their body and their family. They pay the highest price on the rice shelf. They take home the product with the highest arsenic concentration among the rice varieties available. They feed it to their family several times a week with complete confidence that they are making the optimal choice. The gap between what they believe they are buying and what the evidence suggests they are actually getting is not marginal. It is the widest gap on this entire list, which is why Tilda whole grain basmati sits at number 1. Not because Tilda is uniquely malicious, but because the combination of maximum brand trust, maximum health positioning, maximum price, and the highest arsenic concentration among common rice varieties, all with no transparent, publicly verifiable testing data behind it, produces the most consequential disconnection between consumer belief and documented reality anywhere on this list. Before we get to the 2 brands worth buying, leave a comment below. Has this changed how you are thinking about the rice in your cupboard? Which brand surprised you most? We read every response. Now, 2 brands that are doing things the right way. Number 2. Biona Organic Basmati Rice. Biona approaches rice sourcing in a way that almost no mainstream brand bothers with: single origin. The rice comes from specifically selected growing regions in India and Pakistan, where soil conditions have been tested and confirmed to carry lower arsenic concentrations. It is not assembled from whichever country offers the lowest price this season. It comes from the same place consistently, which means you can make the same informed choice twice. Biona is certified organic by the Soil Association, which is the most rigorous organic certification available in Britain. But unlike the supermarket organic brown rice discussed above, Biona's Basmati is semi-milled rather than either fully polished or fully whole grain. This considered middle position means it retains more natural nutrition than heavily processed white rice, without retaining the full bran layer where arsenic concentrates most heavily. It is a deliberate, informed compromise rather than an uncritical commitment to one category. Biona publishes information about its sourcing regions and testing approach. The transparency is not perfect in the way that a fully public, independently audited testing database would represent, but it is considerably more than the vast majority of brands on supermarket shelves are willing to offer. You can find out where the rice grew, you can verify the certifications. You are not simply asked to trust a logo. Biona is available through Holland and Barrett, Planet Organic, Amazon, and a range of independent health food retailers across Britain. It costs more than supermarket-owned brand rice. That cost reflects single origin sourcing, proper certification, and a level of supply chain integrity that the lower price points structurally cannot support. Number 1. India Gate. Basmati rice. India Gate is the brand that professional kitchens in Britain reach for when reliability is not negotiable. Restaurant chefs, catering operations, and South Asian families who eat rice every day and who know immediately from the aroma and texture when something is wrong all tend to return to India Gate. That consistent, repeated endorsement from people who stake the quality of their food on their ingredients is more meaningful than any marketing campaign. India Gate sources from the Indo-Gangetic Plains, the geographical region in northern India that is the recognized home of Basmati. This is where the soil, altitude, climate, and water conditions combine to produce the grain with its distinctive properties. The aging process is conducted properly, typically across 12 to 18 months. And that extended period allows moisture to leave the grain, starches to stabilize, and the naturally occurring aromatic compound that gives authentic basmati its characteristic nutty floral scent to develop to its full concentration. You can smell the difference when you open the bag before a grain of rice has touched water. The grain separation after cooking is excellent because the rice is not over-milled for the sake of shelf life or uniform appearance. Broken grains are screened out before packaging. The texture after cooking is what basmati should be: long, separate, distinct grains that stay individual on the plate. For anyone who has endured sticky, clumped rice from a budget brand and assumed that was just what rice was like, the difference when cooking India Gate is immediate and obvious. India Gate does not rely on synthetic vitamin enrichment to satisfy nutritional labeling requirements. The grain retains more of its natural composition because the processing approach prioritizes the grain itself rather than its visual presentation or warehouse shelf life. Available in larger format bags from Asian supermarkets, selected mainstream supermarket branches, and online retailers, India Gate is not the cheapest option. For anyone eating rice with genuine regularity, the combination of proper aging, quality sourcing, grain integrity, Natural fragrance and consistent performance makes it the clearest, most confident recommendation available. Before you go, here is one change you can make tonight that costs nothing and makes a measurable difference regardless of which rice you buy. The way most people in Britain cook rice involves measuring a specific amount of water relative to the rice and letting it absorb completely during cooking. It is the method printed on most packets. It is the method most people were taught, either from a parent or from the back of a bag decades ago. It seems logical. Use exactly the right amount of water. Let the rice soak it all up. Simple. But that method has a consequence that most people have never considered. Any arsenic that leaves the grain and dissolves into the cooking water during heating goes straight back into the grain as the water disappears. You are not removing the contamination. You are completing a cycle that returns it to your food. Cooking rice in excess water, like pasta, and draining it can cut arsenic levels by about 40 to 60%. Rinsing rice beforehand further reduces contamination. This simple method, just more water and a strainer, can significantly lower long-term exposure without changing taste or cost. Despite this, UK food brands and supermarkets rarely highlight the issue due to lack of legal requirement and incentive. Rice is widely consumed across homes, schools, and hospitals, so this information gap affects millions. Labels don't disclose arsenic levels, origin details, or testing, so you can't rely on packaging alone. But by choosing better brands and adjusting how you cook rice, you can reduce risk starting today. If this helped, share it. More people should know.